America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton. He is a Republican from Arkansas. He won his primary easily last week. He is also the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee and chair of the House Republican Conference. Senator, thank you for joining us. Before you were a senator, you were a congressman. Before you were a congressman, you were a soldier. You fought in Iraq, you fought in Afghanistan, and you served with the Old Guard at Arlington. So the 7 U.S. Army soldiers who've been killed in this combat have, I'm sure, near and dear to you. What do you assess the war as? How is it going, given the casualties we've had and expect?
Well, Hugh, Anna and I join all Arkansans in grieving for those 7 heroes who were killed and wishing our best condolences and sending prayers to their families. But they have not died in vain. This is an absolutely vital and necessary war against a revolutionary terror-supporting country that's been killing Americans for 47 years, to include maiming and killing thousands of other soldiers who served in Iraq or Afghanistan back in the same time I did. So we always grieve the loss of our heroes on the battlefield, but this war was vitally necessary. And so far, our brave and skillful troops have been met with smashing success. You saw the briefing that Admiral Cooper gave last week that gave you the best information you can know about the successes so far, which is Iranian rates of fire have collapsed from the first days of the conflict. That means we've been extraordinarily successful in destroying their missiles, their drones, and their launchers, which was one of the very top objectives in this campaign. Obviously, it continues. We're continuing to target those forces, their Navy, their communications, the regime thugs like the Basij militias, the Quds Force, the Revolutionary Guard Corps that spread and foment revolutionary violence and terror and oppress their own people. So there's still more work to be done. But a week and a half in, I don't think it could be going better for our brave and skillful troops.
Senator Cotton, 10 days in, we also now have a new Supreme Leader, Khamenei 2.0, or at least half of Khamenei 2.0. It is said that he's been seriously wounded in the attacks thus far. That is a break with Khomeini, the founder of the regime's theology. The fanatic said we should not have hereditary succession for Supreme Leader. Think that causes stresses inside of the regime?
Yeah, Hugh, you're right about that. It's always been the official position that the Supreme Leader role should not be hereditary. It be selected by the so-called Assembly of Experts, who are having a tough time assembling right now in peace and quiet, thanks to the United States and Israel. But I can't help but imagine it does cause some internal dissension and rivalry within the ranks of the senior leaders of Iran, who oppose that on ideological grounds or perhaps on personal grounds. And I don't know about you, Hugh, right now. I don't care how radical and fanatical of an Ayatollah I was. I'm not sure I'd want that job title.
No.
Well, the U.S. and Iran is still owning the skies above Iran.
The Admiral gave an update on the sinkings last week that is now out of date because another one occurred today, or 2 occurred today. Open source, Senator, do we know anything about their underwater Navy? They had 5 regular submarines, diesels, at least one of which has been sunk, but they had a lot of submersibles and things like that. I know we have P-8s flying out there. What do you think about that? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Hugh, they do have sizable naval forces. Now, they're what you and I and most Americans might call more of a Coast Guard. A lot of these ships, to include some of those submersibles you mentioned, are smaller. Some of them are autonomous. They're not designed to be on the blue water seas. They're designed for the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. And it's one of our objectives as well to sink their entire Navy. It's not as urgent an objective because they usually can't project power against our bases or against our friends in the Middle East. That's why the missiles and the drones and the launchers were the first objective, because we needed to take those out to protect our troops and to protect our friends in the region. But in the end, I expect to see Iran's Navy at the bottom of the ocean, so they can't continue to threaten shipping through the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, now, Senator, I want to turn to funding the combat. It's been expensive. It's going to continue to be expensive. We had a big plus up in the defense bill, but we need more. And I was asked by Brian Kilmeade last night, what about a supplemental? I don't think you'd get 60 votes, given that the Democrats are turning into part of the appeasement. Could a second reconciliation that focused narrowly on the Department of War actually make it through the House and the Senate?
Always possible, Hugh. I wouldn't necessarily rule out a supplemental bill. Although you're right, the Democrats, amazingly, at a time when no one else in the world is supporting Iran, not even their former quasi-allies like Qatar or Oman or Turkey. The one group left that's supporting Iran in this conflict and rooting for their success seems to be the Democratic Party. But there's no question that after this war concludes, and I saw President Trump's statement today that it may conclude sooner rather than later because they're even ahead of their timetables, there's going to need to be some kind of additional defense spending, especially to replace the very expensive, very high-end, long-range standoff munitions that we used in the first 24 to 72 hours. Things like Patriot and THAAD, missile defense interceptors, PRISM missiles, Tomahawk missiles, and such things. We need that not just because of this conflict, but we've always needed a lot more of it because of the conflict in Ukraine and to deter China from going for the jugular in Taiwan.
Let me ask you about Cuba, Senator, since it's been alight with fires and revolt in the last few days. What do you think is our plan for our island's neighbor?
I'm sorry, Hugh, you're breaking up a little bit.
What do you think is the plan for Cuba, which has had revolution in the streets in the last few nights?
What did President Trump say about it last week? Voluntary transfer or something along those lines? Peaceful handover? Look, Cuba has never been able to support itself since the Castro Revolution. For around 30 years, they had support of Soviet Russia. Soviet Russia provided them financial and economic support. They provided the shock troops for communist insurgencies in Latin America and Africa. They were on the ropes in the 1990s after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But then Hugo Chavez threw them a lifeline in the late 1990s. And ever since, Venezuela has been propping up the Castro regime. In return, they provided security to the Chavistas in Venezuela, although that security proved not to be very helpful during the Maduro raid when a lot of Cubans were left dead on the objective. I think without that support from Venezuela, Cuban's government and really its entire economy just seizes up in a matter of months. And I think that's what the president is talking about. Like, literally, they can't survive without that support from Venezuela. So I would imagine that there are people in Havana right now, imagine thinking of themselves as the Delcy Rodriguez of Cuba, or wondering if they can get one-way tickets booked to join Bashar al-Assad in Moscow.
I agree. Last question. Your colleague, Mark Wayne Mullen. I got to fly on Thursday. I got to fly on Saturday. We need DHS up and running. Does he have the votes? How quickly can he get confirmed?
I assume that's going to be a priority, I think, for the Senate, Hugh. The president said that Secretary No would stay in the job until March 31st. That's just about the time that we'll break to be back home with our people during Easter. So I would imagine the administration is working overtime to get all of Mark Wayne's papers lined up and up to the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, and we'll do everything we can to process his nomination expeditiously.
Senator Tom Cotton, always good to talk to you, get all the info. I appreciate it very much.